No. So friction or so basically we have studied about friction. So it is basically a force which is caused due to the roughness between surface. When contact ulla surface friction undavunnu. Okay. So imagine we have a surface here. നിങ്ങൾക്ക് ബോർഡ് കാണുന്നുണ്ടല്ലോ അല്ലേ? ബോർഡ് കാണുന്നുണ്ടല്ലോ? Yeah, okay. So imagine you have a surface here and you have an object here. Okay. So there is a contact. This is contact. Right. Now what are the forces acting on this? Simple. So I have a free body diagram. If I am drawing the free body diagram, I have the box here. I have its weight acting downward. Okay. And on the contact, I have a contact force acting upward. I have weight acting downward. I have a contact force acting downward, upward. So contact force in a reaction. So this is contact force or normal reaction or reaction. Anything. Okay. So basically, this normal force is, so let's say this is the W. W is the weight, or let's say mass into acceleration due to gravity. Mg is the weight acting downward. N is the upward motion. Okay. So this is what is happening to the box. Now, what about this surface? Okay, surface is surface is the surface we will have an equal and opposite force acting downward. And opposite force acting downward. Okay. So angane above the balance level. So let's say so this is how it becomes balanced. The body balance of the normal reaction. So the surface the support ayonde etra force ingotu vannalum athrom reaction is support thirichu kodutittu it will be in balance. So that is how it works. Okay. So idana oru normal oru sitting body inde force. Now imagine that you are trying to pull this in a rectangle. You are trying to pull it with some force F. Okay. So let's say the weight of the body or is 10 kg. Let's say the mg equal to 10 kg. Okay. You want to know what will be the force at which we will be able to move it. Okay. So what you are observing is, so what I will do now is I will open a just yeah. So you can see this is a small graph that I am doing. So this graph you can see here. This is the force. So just give me a moment. Okay, the board right? You can see the board. Okay, so let's say I am pulling. So this is my pulling force. Okay, so let's say I am applying first. This box is there. I am applying 0.25 Newton. Okay, 0.25 Newton, and I am observing that it is not moving. Not moving. Either there is some force which is opposing this. Why am I telling this? Because this box is there. There is a force acting in this direction. If this force is unbalanced, then it should accelerate with force is equal to mass into acceleration. Here equation it has to follow, and it has to accelerate with an acceleration of F upon m. It is supposed to do that, but you are observing that it is not moving. So that means you have to tell that there is some force acting in the opposite direction. Okay, I'll call this force as F. So because because this is the only surface which can give some force, so there could be some force acting in this direction. Okay, I am assuming this force is equal to this force. Then only that is why it is not moving. Observe here. So I'll draw here in the force. I will draw here what is my capital F. And apply the force. And in this axis, I will take my friction force. Okay. So I am observing when I am applying zero force, it is not moving. So my friction also is zero. So that is my first point. So that is this point. This one. My second point is I am applying, let's say, 0.25 Newton. Okay. I am applying 0.25 Newton. So this is my capital F. This is my small f. I am applying 0.25 Newton. I am observing that it is not moving. So that means small f also should be 0.25. Okay, so that is this point. Now I am increasing the force to, let's say, 0.5. 0.5 Newton or Newton, whatever it is. I am observing it is not moving. Okay, so that is this point. Adinartham, friction is also same as 0.5. If it is not moving, means this force is opposed by some friction force. Key directional force. Find the value. This is same. Then only it is not moving. Then I am keep on applying. I will apply 0.5, 0.75, 1, 1.25, 1.5, 1.75. So maybe 2. This is 2. You can see here 2, 2. So the moment I applied 2, observing not moving. So that means F also should be equal to 2. Okay. So if you plot it, you'll get a straight line like this. You get a straight line like this. Okay. Now this opposing force, which is increasing as we keep on increasing the force, is what is known as friction. But we have force to adjust. Okay. Now does it do the infinite adjust to you? What happens if you see here? The moment I started applying 2.0001, ഒരു ചെറിയ 2 cutting കുറച്ച് കൂടുതൽ force apply ചെയ്തപ്പോൾ what I am seeing is it is started to move. Okay, it's moving. It's not moving. Okay. Then ഇത് മൂവ് ചെയ്യുന്നുണ്ട്, but then we observe that the move ചെയ്ത് തുടങ്ങുമ്പോൾ the opposing friction force suddenly reduces. Okay, അതായത് റെസ്റ്റിലായപ്പോൾ നമ്മൾ എത്ര ഫോഴ്സ് അപ്ലൈ ചെയ്യുന്നു അത്രയും ഫോഴ്സ് ഫ്രിക്ഷൻ അപ്ലൈ തിരിച്ചു കൊടുത്തു അപ് ടു സർട്ടൻ ടൈം. അതിനുശേഷം ഇവിടെ നമ്മൾ 2 കൊടുത്തു. അതിനുശേഷം ഇത് മൂവ് ചെയ്ത ഉടനെ ദാറ്റ് ഫ്രിക്ഷൻ ഫോഴ്സ് സ്റ്റാർട്ടഡ് റെഡ്യൂസിങ്. Okay, so if I apply, let's say 4, it is moving, but still the friction force is only 1.5. Here also it is 1.5. So there is a net difference in force. So 2.001 minus 1.5 ആണ് force. ഈ force divided by is equal to mass into acceleration. E force equal to mass into acceleration. Okay, net force is 2.001 minus 1.5. Here net force is 4 minus 1.5 equal to mass into acceleration. Okay, what is observing is this region is when it is moving. This is when it is static. Okay, the force in this region is what is known as static friction force. And here it is known as dynamic friction force. The dynamic friction force is the friction force acting on the body when the body is moving. Static is when it is at rest. Okay, static friction force is a self-adjusting force. അതിന്റെ ഫോഴ്സിന്റെ മാഗ്നിറ്റ്യൂഡ് പയ്യെ നമ്മൾ എത്ര ഫോഴ്സ് ആണ് അപ്ലൈ ചെയ്യുന്നത് അതനുസരിച്ച് ഇത് കൂടിക്കൊണ്ടിരിക്കും up to certain point. Okay, dynamic friction force is always constant. Okay, so this I hope this concept is clear. Friction. Friction എന്ന് പറയുമ്പോൾ ആ സർഫേസിന്റെ നമ്മൾ ഇതൊക്കെ കണ്ടിട്ടുണ്ടോ, നമ്മൾ എപ്പോഴും കണ്ടിട്ടുണ്ടോ, നമുക്ക് if you are placing your mobile on a surface or something, if you try to push it very tight, it will not move. Okay, slight force increase it will start moving. Okay, even നിങ്ങളുടെ ഡെസ്കുകൾ ഈ ഹെവി ആയിട്ടുള്ള എന്തെങ്കിലും സാധനങ്ങൾ നിങ്ങൾ ഫുൾ വെയിറ്റ് കൊടുത്തിട്ട് നിങ്ങൾ മൂവ് ചെയ്യുകയാണെങ്കിൽ It will stay like that. After a certain point, you can force jump. Sudden jump in free action in the friction force in the value, jump body object, movie jump. Okay, the car slide in objects. When you're applying, keeping on applying, increasingly applying some force, when it is starting, there's a jump. Okay, so jump is because reacting the force sudden because another dynamic friction. Okay, dynamic friction is always lesser than the maximum static friction. Okay. So that is about how the friction behavior. The behavior and how do you find friction force? Friction force, as I told you, there is a box. Mg is there. There is this normal force acting upward. Okay, the friction force is equal to some coefficient of friction into normal force. എത്രയാണോ ഈ സർഫേസിലുള്ള normal force, other into some factor, some value. So this is a constant. It is also known as coefficient of friction. Okay. Statically and dynamically, there is two coefficients. There is static coefficient. There is dynamic. So dynamic is when body is moving or bodies are moving. Moving related to each other. Okay. Static means bodies are at rest. Okay. So this is the difference. So static, dynamic friction. So generally, dynamic friction force.
ഏത് കാഞ്ഞിപ്പള്ളി പഞ്ചായത്തിന്റെ അടവാണോ? ഞാനത് പാറത്തോടാണെന്ന്.
Bibin Jacob. എന്താ ബിബിൻ ജോക്ക് ഫോൺ ഒക്കെയാണോ ക്ലാസ്സിനിടയ്ക്ക്?
അല്ലല്ല,
അറിയാണ്ട് എന്താണ് പോയത്?
അല്ല, ഇത് എങ്ങനെയാ വീഡിയോ ഓണായി?
ക്ലാസ്സിൽ ഇരിക്കുമ്പോ ക്ലാസ് ശ്രദ്ധിക്കുക, ഫോണിൽ സംസാരിക്കാതെ.
എങ്ങനെ ഓണായി പോവാ? കൈ തട്ടി.
ഓക്കെ, ഞാനിത് യൂട്യൂബിൽ എടുത്തിട്ടില്ല, എല്ലാരും കാണും കേട്ടോ. പിന്നെ okay, right. So this is about static and somebody's mic is on. Right. So some static friction coefficients are, for example, let's say copper on steel. Copper on steel. Okay, so let's say one surface is steel, another purpose is, let's say, copper, steel. Okay, it is something around 0.4 coefficient of friction. Then we can say steel on steel is 0.57. Okay. So approximate values ranges from 0.2 to 0.6. Range the values of coefficient of friction values. Okay, it depends upon this is all static friction. Values of static friction. Dynamic friction values will be lesser. 0.3, 0.2 k. Okay, so this is the case of friction. Now we want to know what is the direction of friction force. Okay. So it is just simple. It opposes the motion. എങ്ങോട്ടാണ് മൂവ് ചെയ്യുന്നത് അതിന് ഓപ്പോസിറ്റ് ആയിരിക്കും. ഓക്കെ, ഫോർ എക്സാമ്പിൾ സർഫേസ് ഇസ് ദർ, ബോക്സ് ഇസ് ദർ, the box is trying to move in this direction. Okay, so if I isolate the box, this is my force I'm applying. So my friction will be in the opposite direction. Okay, and the value will be mu times n, where is n is the normal force acting here. Box load to act in the normal force n. Mu times n are friction value. Okay, now what about if you have two boxes? I am pulling this box. Okay, we have two surfaces. Let's say we have a surface here. We have a surface here. Let's say the surface is frictionless. Okay, and let's say I am tying this to tie the curve. So what is the direction of friction force on this box and on this box? How do you find it? Okay, so what you do, let's try to find this box. E box. E box is number one. If I draw the first box, so this is A, this is B. If I draw the first box, it is trying to move in that direction. Okay, so this side surface is frictionless, so there is no friction force here. So there is a friction force here, some friction force here. What is the other force? That can be a weight of this box acting downward. Weight. Okay, there can be a normal force because of this box on this box. So that will be normal force times on A due to B. Okay, now what about the other box? This is box A. Box B, we can have a force like this from the rope into the force down. We can have a weight acting downward. We can also have a reaction NAB in opposite direction. Okay, then we should have a friction. In E box in the friction force act here. Okay, so what you have to see is you have to see with respect to this box has a tendency to move in this direction. Train railway station train platform അതേപോലെ തന്നെ ഈ ബോക്സ് മുന്നോട്ട് പോകുമ്പോൾ നിങ്ങൾ ഈ ബോക്സ് നോക്കിക്കഴിഞ്ഞാൽ വിത്ത് റെസ്പെക്ട് ടു ദിസ് ബോക്സ് ഇത് മൂവ് ചെയ്യുന്നത് ഇങ്ങോട്ടാണ്. അപ്പൊ എന്തുകൊണ്ടാണ് ഈ ബോക്സിന് നമ്മൾ വിത്ത് റെസ്പെക്ട് ടു ഈ ബോക്സ് നോക്കണം പറയുന്നത്? കാരണം ഈ ബോക്സ് ആണ് ഈ ബോക്സിന് മേലെ ഫ്രിക്ഷൻ ഫോഴ്സ് ആക്ട് ചെയ്യുന്നത്, അപ്ലൈ ചെയ്യുന്നത്. അതേപോലെ ഈ ബോക്സ് ആണ് ഈ ബോക്സിന് മേലെ ഫ്രിക്ഷൻ ഫോഴ്സ് ആക്ട് ചെയ്യുന്നത്. സോ ഇറ്റ്സ് കോൺടാക്ട് ഫോഴ്സ് ആണ്, ഇതിന്റെ കോൺടാക്ട് കാരണമാണ് വരുന്നത്. അപ്പം ഈ ഫോഴ്സ് സ്റ്റേഷനറി ആയിട്ട് നിങ്ങൾ ഇമാജിൻ ചെയ്യുകയാണെങ്കിൽ ഇത് ഇങ്ങോട്ട് മൂവ് ചെയ്യുന്ന പോലെ നിങ്ങൾക്ക് ഫീൽ ചെയ്യും. ഓക്കെ, സോ ദ ഫ്രിക്ഷൻ ഫോഴ്സ് വിൽ ബി ഇൻ ദിസ് ഡയറക്ഷൻ. Right? I hope this is clear. Here box friction force will be in this direction. Here box friction force will be in this direction. These two friction force will be equal and opposite. This will be equal and opposite because the value of friction force is mu times NAB. The normal reaction here is equal to mu times NAB. Okay, so this is how friction force acts. Now we will have to see some more example. Problems before that I just want to just get familiar with friction force in the direction. So let's say we have a small wedge like this. Okay, so let's say we have another wedge like this. Let's say we have a surface here. Let's say we have another surface here. I am applying a force here. Okay, so we have to find direction of identify direction of friction forces. Okay, so what I will do, I'll isolate these wedges, two wedges, and I'll isolate here. Let us say this is my first wedge. I'll draw all the forces. Okay. Now before that I have to tell this is frictionless. I can say this is frictionless. I can say this there is friction. Let's assume this is frictionless for now. Let's assume this also to be frictionless. Frictionless. Okay. Now we'll assume draw the forces. There is a force F acting here. There should be a contact force in this direction. Okay. N1. Then there should be some contact force in this direction. N2. Okay. It's on a force. Now, even if this surface there is no friction, the friction is left. Now there is friction between these two. Let's say coefficient of friction is mu. Friction between these two. Okay. Now, this surface level friction. Now we have to think either direction like friction. Okay. As simple as horizontal direction. It has a tendency to move in this direction. Like, to move a tendency because the force is in this direction. So my friction will be acting in this direction. And value of F will be mu times N2. Because the value of friction force is mu times the normal force acting on the surface. If force surface is normal force into mu friction value. Now let us take about this box. This box in terms of circle. Now what is the forces? So you would have force miss zero and a weight. Okay. So here also there will be a weight here. Right? Then what else force is there? If you have a force on nulla, this force will act in the opposite direction, N2. Equal and opposite. Right? Is there any other force here? So you can see this, the tendency is to come down. So the friction force has to be applied in the opposite direction. This also is equal to mu times N2. Okay. So that is why these two friction forces are equal and opposite direction. So here there is no friction, other than friction. Friction force in direction. Okay. So I hope this is clear. Now, we'll learn another term. So 2-3 terms you have to do. One is coefficient of friction. Coefficient of friction and angle of friction. What do you mean by angle of friction? Okay. Angle of friction and angle of repose. These are terms. Okay. So first we will see about angle of friction. So angle of friction is basically, as I told you, box. Angle of friction. Okay. So let's say we will draw the box again. We have the surface here. Okay. We are pulling it. Then we have the normal force here from the surface on the box. Okay. We have the weight here. Then we have the friction force here. What you have to do, you have to isolate these two forces. These two forces are isolate here. And the friction force in the normal reaction. Normal reaction. Okay. You have to find the resultant of these two. We know resultant many ways are there. Okay. So I'll use the graphical method because that is easier to represent. This is a normal. Okay. This is the resultant. So R is the resultant of normal force and friction force. Okay. The angle which this resultant make with the surface. Okay. With the surface is what is known as The contact surface ആയിട്ട് ഉണ്ടാക്കുന്ന ആംഗിൾ. അപ്പോൾ ഏത് ആംഗിൾ? ഇതാണ് എൻ്റെ കോണ്ടാക്ട് സർഫേസ് അല്ലേ, ഇതാണ് എൻ്റെ കോണ്ടാക്ട് സർഫേസ്. ഇതുമായിട്ട് ഉണ്ടാക്കുന്ന ആംഗിൾ, ദിസ് ആംഗിൾ ഈസ് വാട്ട് ഈസ് നോൺ ആസ് ആംഗിൾ ഓഫ് ഫ്രിക്ഷൻ. So very basic definition. You have to know this. Okay. Now how do you find angle of friction? So finding angle of friction is simply straightforward. If you see tan phi, you will get that opposite by adjacent. Opposite no about n ആണ് divided by adjacent no about okay. One second. Sorry. I think I definition of angle of repose is this. Angle between angle of friction. Angle of friction is angle between. Sorry. Angle between normal force and angle between normal force and resultant. Okay, so tan phi equal to opposite mu times n divided by adjacent, that is n. So tan phi equal to mu and phi equal to tan inverse of mu. Okay, so this is angle of friction. So if somebody you will be given angle of friction. Angle of friction okay, so somebody gives you angle of friction. If angle of friction is given, mu equal to tan of phi is the coefficient of friction. Coefficient of friction tan. Okay, so I think this is also a straightforward question. Okay, there can be many problems like this. I think I'll take a problem. Okay, so we'll just do a problem and we will stop for the day. Let me see. Your body weighs 900 or 90 newtons. Okay, and is placed in a rough surface. Okay, determine coefficient of friction. Determine coefficient of friction and angle of friction. If a force of 63 Newton moves the just moves the object. Just moves the object. Okay. The body is resting on a horizontal plane. Right. So we have a body, some shaped body. Let's say box. We have a surface here. Okay. There's a contact here. The weight of the body is given as 90 Newton. So this is fairly basic problem. 90 Newton. Okay. And so that means it is giving a reaction here N. And it is telling that if I apply a small force F, 63 Newton, it will just start to. Okay. As usual, what you do, you just draw the free body diagram. The free body diagram, there is a 63 here. There is a, I don't know, 90 here. there is a N here, and there will be some friction F here. Okay. Now friction is equal to mu times N. That is the friction force. Now how do you find this? What is observed is the body just starts to move. Just starts to move in the point. It is a just end of the equilibrium. Equilibrium is rest body just equilibrium just break in a time. Okay. So we can say that we can use equilibrium equation. So equilibrium equation body motion use. Only thing is you should know the acceleration. So we will study all those things later. So we can say for equilibrium, summation of forces in x direction should be equal to 0. Summation of forces in y direction should be equal to 0. Okay. So we will not take about rotational equilibrium. We are just looking into this. So x direction only will be x direction. So y direction, if you see, and then the forces in y direction up positive and again, we have a normal force upward. We have a 90 Newton downward, which is equal to 0. So this gives my normal force is 90. Okay, and this if I use, I'll get right positive 63 minus mu times n equal to 0. Okay. 60. This equilibrium rest equilibrium equation equal to 0. You have to say if there is an unbalanced force, that is summation of fx is not equal to 0 means it will start moving in that direction. Okay, so 63 minus mu times n at 90 equal to 0. So mu equal to 63 upon 90. That gives me suppose 0.7. Coefficient of friction is 0.7. It's a very high value. Okay. And what about angle of friction? Tan phi equal to mu. Phi equal to tan inverse of. Okay, so that means tan inverse of 0.7. 35 degree. Okay, അതായത് എൻ്റെ normal force and the friction force the resultant we can find the resultant also, but it is not required. The resultant in the angle, this angle will be 35 degrees. Okay, so this is mu times. So this is friction, angle of friction. I hope this is clear. If you are confused, I will confuse our. You should know what this angle of friction is. Right. Now, I'll just introduce a new concept. We will not derive that. Second concept is angle of repose. Angle of repose. Okay. So angle of repose, it is basically it is a maximum inclination of plane in which body can repose without. So repose in the literal meaning sleep. Sleep repose in the literal meaning sleep meaning. Okay. So this is a maximum maximum angle. So if you have a body, if you have a wedge or something, let's say, in a surface or rod or anything. Okay. So this is my body here. Now angle of repose is, let's say, alpha. Maximum value of alpha up to which the body will be at rest. Okay, sleeping, body resting. You can imagine an object object. I don't know whether you can see this. So I'll take a small object. Okay. So in the angle, it is at rest. After some angle, it will start to move. Okay. Up to what angle it will be at rest? Another question. Angle of rest. Okay. So there are ways to find this. Simple mathematical equation based on controlling case. that I think we will do in the next class. So just give me a moment. Okay. So I hope everyone has submitted